First, Mohammad Marandi is a professor at the University of Tehran, and he joins us live from there. Thank you very much for your time once again. So we're getting a little bit more information. Obviously, we've heard the confirmation now from the Israelis saying that they have carried out these precise attacks. Can you just take us back? Is this just a result of what happened on October 7, or does this go further back?
Well, again, I have to stress that I have not heard any explosions, but I'm in one part of Tehran. It's a huge city. I've contacted people in different parts of the country online, except for one or two people. They're all asleep. No one has, the one or two people that I've spoken to and the people who I've seen their messages online, there's nothing, so far there's nothing confirmed. There's some of the explosions may have been surface-to-air defenses. There may have been a place that was struck. I don't know at this stage, but we'll have to wait and see. We did see what the Israeli regime spokesman said. We'll have to wait, though, for some sort of news from Tehran later on. But no, this did not begin on October the 7th, just as the horrific crimes against the people of Gaza did not begin on October the 8th. It began decades ago. And the Americans and the Israelis and Westerners, Western elites, like to begin history from a certain point which benefits them. But the reality is that the colonization of Palestine began more than 76 years ago. But Iran's problems with the United States and the Israeli regime began a long time ago. But the first time the Israeli regime and the Americans together struck Iran was with a cyber attack. And this was the first cyber attack in history since the beginning of the internet. And then the Israeli regime, with U.S. support, carried out a series of assassinations on nuclear scientists, including a colleague of mine at the University of Tehran, Dr. Mohammadi, was murdered in front of his wife. And then they carried out a number of drone attacks, but also they murdered Iranian officers who were fighting against al-Qaeda and ISIS in Syria when the Israelis were helping with the dirty war. But then in this current phase began with the bombing of the Iranian embassy in Damascus. And after that, the United States, the Europeans, they supported the Israelis in the UN Security Council. So they supported the bombing of the Iranian consulate. And so Iran felt it had to respond, and it did. Then again, the Israeli regime carried out another crime by through the martyrdom of Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran and a companion of his, and he was in Tehran for the inauguration of the presidential inauguration. He was a special guest of the Iranian president. So the Iranians had to respond again. Why? Because the Iranians felt they had to create deterrence. If they didn't, then the Israeli regime would strike again. So we are where we are. Whatever the Israeli regime did tonight, and I don't know what they've done. I haven't seen anything. It doesn't look impressive, whatever it was. But whatever they've done was not a retaliation. They initiated this. And ultimately, the Iranians will make sure that the Israeli regime is punished. The Israelis have failed in Gaza. They've carried out a genocide with Western support. There's no pride in that has destroyed the image of the West across the world. Israel has been seen as an illegitimate colony that just commits slaughter. The West has been destroyed. The West has nothing to offer to the world anymore after what it's done and what it's doing to the people of Gaza. And then we saw what they did in Lebanon. But the Israeli regime on the battlefield, they've gained nothing in Gaza, even though it's been over a year. They haven't been able to take this dot on the map. And remember, this is the same regime that took the Suez Canal. This is this Israeli regime that in 1982 took Beirut very swiftly.
Now, speaking of Lebanon, sorry just to stop you there, but speaking of Lebanon, because in this latest statement from Daniel Hagari, the Israeli forces spokesman, he says the IDF is fully prepared in attack and defense, and he says we are following the developments from Iran, but also mentions, it says, its proxies in the region. And of course, Israel is referring specifically to Hamas and Hezbollah, which it has accused Iran of funding both groups in Gaza and Lebanon for several years. And it has accused of Iran of doing so not just financially, but also militarily. What do you make of that?
Those are not accusations. Iran is very proud of supporting Hamas, and Iran is very proud of supporting Islamic Jihad, and Iran is proud of supporting all the Palestinian groups in Palestine. It's their land. It's their country. They're under occupation. Iran supported the resistance, the ANC in South Africa against the apartheid regime when the West was supporting the apartheid regime. And that is why when Nelson Mandela was freed, he traveled to Iran. Among the first countries that he traveled to was Iran. The same is true in Palestine. The Israeli regime is an illegitimate colony. It is an ethno-supremacist regime. The West supports racism. It supports racial domination. That is what it supports. The West supports racial hierarchy in our part of the world. They support a chosen people and all others must be subordinate. The Palestinians are Amalek, according to the Israeli prime minister and other senior officials. They're a subordinate race. So Iran will not accept that. And Iran will continue to support the resistance. They will support Hezbollah. They will support Ansarullah, as they did in the past. And apartheid in Palestine will not last. The world has turned against the Israeli regime. They failed, as I said, in Gaza. They failed in Lebanon. After a month, they were supposed to take southern Lebanon. They have failed to do anything. And they've had huge setbacks and huge numbers of casualties over the last few days. Hezbollah has, when Seyed Hassan Nasrallah was martyred in Beirut, I was there, and I spoke on Al Jazeera repeatedly on the first day, and I said nothing will change. Hezbollah will emerge stronger, and it did. And Hezbollah is defeating them on the battlefield. Iran is much stronger than Hamas or Hezbollah or Ansarullah. If the Israeli regime gets into a fight with Iran, the regime will be on the losing end. And the Americans should be very careful, because the Iranians will defend their sovereignty if the Americans get involved. And all its bases in the region and those regimes that host those bases, they will be in deep trouble.
Okay, thank you very much for your thoughts there. Mohammad Marandi, who's a professor at the University of Tehran, giving us his thoughts from the Iranian capital.